to say, won't you please just go away? I don't know when you. I want everyone to know I'm looking for a good Well, if you know what to sing after that, you can just join in, right? Still on. It's 1 p.m. Talk on the blog brought to you compliments ESA Trading Limited, New India Assurance. Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome, welcome, welcome. It's time for Talk on the Block for today, Friday, August 8th, 2025. On this edition, we're talking the trajectory of the middle class and the Dominican economy. Share the live and tell a friend to tune in. As we engage this afternoon. My first guest is already in the building and is just getting sorted out. Welcome, one and all. Talk on the Block, sponsored again by ESA Trading Limited and the New India Assurance. Let's take a break. We'll be back after this. We are in the Atlantic hurricane season. Stay tuned to radio and television stations for regular bulletins. Rely only on official bulletins. Do not check these over the telephone. A message from Q95 FM Radio.
Add some sweetness to your days with Sunday's ice cream, and you can be the next lucky winner to an all expense paid trip to Guadeloupe. Purchase one tub of any Sunday's ice cream at Fresh Market or Best Price. Write your name and number at the back of the receipt and place it in the box provided. Or WhatsApp a photo of your receipt with your name to 317-4130. That's 317-4130. This summer, make every day Sunday. Terms and conditions apply.
I wanna drink Dominica, that's rum with you. I wanna drink Dominica, that's rum with you. Get the body, drink it every day. Give me energy. No right pepper. Get the body, drink it every day. Give me energy. Time to day me wet. Okay, my body, my baby, who's ready, full energy. My body, my baby, who's ready, full energy. Okay, boom. Distributed by Belfast Estate Limited. Drink it, but don't abuse it. Okay, boom. All right, special thanks to our sponsor for the Talk on the Block again, the good folks at ISA Trading Limited and at New India Assurance. We appreciate them very much. This afternoon, we are talking on the topic of the trajectory of the middle class and the Dominican economy. It will be another impactful discussion. One would ask, what is the middle class? There are varying meaning or definitions. One definition is the social group between the upper and working classes, including professional and business people and their families. Of course, we'll hear more from our first guest. Our first guest is in the building, and we are honored to have him this afternoon on Talk on the Block. Another brilliant man of the soil who has invested so much into Dominica's culture. He is, of course, the manager for Our Lady of Song, Ophelia Marie. Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, let me just introduce the economist, music business entrepreneur, and intellectual property expert, born Dominican, McCarthy Marie. Good afternoon and welcome to the big station.
Yes, good afternoon, Richie. Glad to be here.
I'm really, really happy to have you here. And as usual, you came in very promptly.
I try to do that all the
time. You're known for that. You're known. We had a good, interesting discussion of air over the phone as it relates to this topic. And I really appreciate your interest in engaging in this topic, as you can imagine, very timely and relevant to the Dominica scope of things. So we're talking the trajectory of the middle class and the Dominican economy. Let me just ask you off the bat, from an economist's perspective, how has the composition and purchasing power of Dominica's middle class evolved over the last 20 years, to your mind, based on
20
what you've
years,
seen?
that's, that's a long period there. Um, I would think basically in purchasing power parity terms, it's more or less been static in terms that your nominal income probably increased, but since prices were increasing as well,
Yeah.
you probably can't buy more with your bigger salary now than you did with your smaller salary in
Then,
2000,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Yeah,
Well, you and I had a very interesting conversation as it relates to the definition of the term middle class.
right.
Before we continue, I'd like you to give professionally your definition of
Well,
what that term means.
the middle class is defined as a group of persons who are between the wealthy and the poor.
Yes.
Okay, so in different countries, that will be related to different things. For example, a country in one country might be you might be wealthy if you have $100,000 income per year. Okay, in another country it might be if you have 1 million, you're wealthy,
Mhm.
right? So you have to contextualize it as to who is in the middle class according to the country you're in. So in Dominica, the class of people who are in the middle would be the class of persons who are not wealthy, not poor. That's the definition. Now, to decide who is wealthy and who is poor, you'd have to go to the income statistics to know who's making money and how many people are in the wealthy category and how many people are in the poor category. Those who are and the others will by definition be in the middle class because they'll be in the middle, right? And generally, the people who are in the middle class are people who are educated, fairly well educated, university education or at least high school education, and they have a steady job that pays an income somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 dollars a month. So you would find a group of persons, school teachers, police officers, um, civil servants in the like middle grade of the civil service, or public service generally. Yeah, that group of persons and some persons who own their own small businesses, they make sufficient income to fall in to the middle class. And then the others would be, if you like, who will make less income than that, and the numbers I was mentioning there would be considered to be in the to be poor. Okay, and
Mhm.
as we know, for example, the people who are poor or who are, and as well as those who are in the lower middle class, the government makes a special concession that they don't pay income tax because your income tax is only paid on your income if your income is $30,000 per year or
Or
more.
more.
So if you make less than $30,000 income per year, you don't pay income tax. Yeah. So basically, the people who pay income tax are the people in the higher middle class and the wealthy pay income tax. And the middle class is actually quite a large group by definition.
Mhm.
And the wealthy actually is quite a small group. Yes?
Usually.
Yeah.
Excellent. To what extent, let's move to the creative economy. To what extent does the creative economy,
No, no, but just something I might just have
yeah,
to
go
say
ahead.
about that. There is something called a Gini coefficient. Gini, Gini. That's the guy's name who came up with the coefficient. He's an Italian fellow. So it's called Gini coefficient,
Mhm.
which models the degree of inequality in a society. Okay, so if it goes between 0 and 1 or 100, if you prefer to eliminate decimals. So if there is the Gini coefficient is 0, that means there is everybody has the same income. If it's 1 or 100, then one person owns all the or has all the income and wealth. Okay, so it and well, none of these exist in any country. The
Yeah.
extremes don't exist. So you will fall somewhere in between there. And between, I looked at the numbers for Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados, yeah, and Dominica. Dominica had the lowest level of um, income inequality. So we should say that we don't have a few persons who are very wealthy and many people who are poor in Dominica fall into the poor category. The difference between the wealthy and the middle class and the poor isn't large.
So there's not much of a disparity,
Yes, there is disparity, but not that
not to an
much. Yeah, at
extreme.
least relative to Jamaica, which I think is 57, and Barbados is about 47. I think we are 34. Yeah, these are the estimates for this year, right?
That's interesting. That's interesting, Mark. To what extent does the creative economy now, including intellectual property, music, offer viable pathways for the middle class population in Dominica?
Actually, in 2010, I participated in a study that was done by, led by Dr. Professor Vanus James, give him his full title, to measure the economic contribution of the copyright-based industries to the economies of the OECS. They did two studies actually, one on for the OECS and one on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And we found that, in point of fact, the economies there performed relatively well, but not as well as they should have done. For example, the copyright-based industries in Dominica, we found, were too heavily dependent on culture rather than other activities. For example, the copyright-based industries include the whole computer and ICT thing. Okay, that we didn't have many people who were gaining their income from those activities at the time in 2010. Hopefully, it's been changing a little bit, but we didn't have many of them. So that most of the people who were in the copyright-based industries who, in point of fact, in engaging in cultural activities rather than the broader group of activities, which includes book publishing, broadcasting, like this here, what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We are, in point of fact, creating copyright, which is owned by the Q95. The
Mhm.
broadcast is owned by them and it's protected by copyright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So indeed, the creative industries, broadly speaking, which would include, well, the one people talk about the most and probably in which most people hope that they can make some kind of living is music.
Music.
But we also have people who do painting. For example, I knew early Etienne, he made his living painting, selling paintings. That's what he did. He sold paintings regularly, which people in Switzerland and so on or in Europe bought um, steadily from him. So he made his living from that, as well as there's some other paint artists who do that as well. Okay, and then we have people who write books, although I would say there isn't too much book writing and so on there for commercial purposes. Although people do write in newspapers, with people who, like, the reporters who write and work for newspapers are part of the creative industry. Then we have a few people who are now getting into fashion, so they're making and designing and making garments, and they charge for their designs as well as the labor connected to producing the clothes. For example, at carnival time, there is a big demand for creative designs for formal wear, and then there is the, like, costume part of it. Yeah, so we do have people in different fields, not only music. Music tends to stand out because we all love music,
Yeah.
but and we
Yeah.
tend to take these activities as things that will be there anyway because people have to wear clothes. Therefore, we don't pay too much
Too much
attention to that.
attention.
But it's a viable industry in which people can make their living and make a good living if you make designer clothes. Like, for example, Ophelia made a concert in or multiple concerts in Paris, and she was given a dress by Paco Rabanne. It was only one of its kind. If you're in high fashion, haute couture, you don't make ready-made clothes. You make single dresses. And the dress which he gave her would have sold at the time for 20,000 francs, which would be about 10,000 EC dollars. So he effectively gave her a gift of 10,000 EC
$10,000.
dollars. And it's designed by Paco Rabanne. So it's one of a kind. You will never
Yeah.
find another lady in an evening event and so on with a dress like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a special gift.
Yes, and then just to talk about that there, I ask you a question, I answer the question. Which country in the world gets the most foreign tourists?
I'd say Italy.
Hmm?
Italy.
Italy. You almost got it right. It's France. It's France. France is the country in the world that gets the most foreign tourists.
Yeah.
And the people are not going to France because it's warm. They're going to France for the culture and the high style and high life, which makes, back to the intellectual property thing, France very aggressive on protecting trademarks. All these bogus Nike, Lacoste as a French brand, LVH, Louis Vuitton bags and so on there in Dominica. The law in Dominica actually makes provision for you to get a serious fine, including jail sentence, for dealing and selling counterfeit clothes or counterfeit items, whatever they might be. But it's just that the public is not, particularly sensitive to that. But
So
and France
Elaine,
does that because that is part of the French image of high culture and high style, in other words.
let
So
me
people go there for that, for the high culture and high style. Even the cemetery in France, now, Père Lachaise Cemetery. People go there to the cemetery as tourists to just to go around and watch the graves of Moliere and famous French writers and an American rock and roll singer. Jim Morrison of the Doors is buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery.
and that's treated as a
Yes, it's a big
tourist.
tourist attraction. There are guides there who speak all kinds of languages, and they have all the descriptions of who was where and what is what. And there are lines of people lining up to go in the cemetery.
So so we could learn from that, Mark.
Yeah, sure. So culture is a thing that can generate money itself directly by selling cultural goods and services. But besides that, it also adds to the renown of your country, and people will come to participate in, see, and your culture and so on. Which is why we have to present and preserve what might seem like old stuff to people, old buildings and so on there. But Roseau had a particular architectural style, the veranda that covered the sidewalk.
Sidewalk, yeah.
Okay, so it was a practical thing because it normally has a lot of rain. It allowed you to walk in the Roseau even when the rain is falling by walking under the
Under the
verandas
verandas, yeah.
and not getting wet. But we've been sort of forgetting that and building, you might say, glass and concrete buildings that have no verandas. So the style of Roseau, building in Roseau, is changing. Maybe not for the better, I would think.
That's a very interesting
Because,
perspective.
for example, back to France, it's in Paris. You are not allowed to change the outside of your building. You can remodel it inside, but the outside must remain exactly as it is. And in the city of Paris itself, there are no high-rise buildings. There are no buildings taller than 4 stories. So if you have to go on the edge of Paris, that's where they have tall buildings.
Wow.
Because they want the city of Paris to remain as is.
As is.
Yes, as much as possible.
And that forms part of the tourism product.
Like the church that got destroyed there in the fire. They were trying to renovate it because as a
Notre Dame, yeah.
church at Notre Dame, well, it took about 300 years to be built. Yeah. And it's an architectural marvel. And it's a great tourist attraction. You remember in the Bible when they said Jesus went to the temple and found people selling all kinds of things and he was upset?
Mm.
Well, when you go to Notre Dame, in front of the church, the entire place is covered with vendors selling all manner of things there, because that's where tourists are going to be coming. They come there to see and watch the edifice. That is why the government has to hustle up and repair it, because it's a significant part of their heritage. And the building, by the way, doesn't belong to the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is allowed to use it, but all churches in France, all Catholic churches in France are owned by the government. They are the proprietors.
That's very interesting.
Yes, right. A little history there, right.
What barriers currently prevent middle income earners, Matt, from building generational wealth in our country? And, and how can these be addressed through innovation or policy?
Hmm. Well, most people who joined the middle class are people who came from what you might call the lower class or the poorer class, poorer group of persons. And the way they did it, or we did it, let me put it this way better, is through education. Okay? So, for example, if you want to be a teacher, you can't be an illiterate. You at least have, if you can't teach in a primary school if you're illiterate. Okay? So you have to at least know um, sufficient literacy to teach in the primary school. If you want to be a manager of some business in Roseau, or even open your own business and run it, in a better way than other people, you have to have some training. So we have been having the middle class expanding on the basis of more and more education. Okay. Now we actually have, and we've been across the Caribbean, that's been taken, that the government has a responsibility to make sure everybody get the maximum education they can attain, whether they have some disability or not. Okay, because some people, you might be disabled, so the kinds of jobs that you can do and the kinds of education you can take, for example, might be limited because of your incapacity. So, but you can do other things. So, education is one of the main routes to get into the middle class and to stay in the middle class. Although that now is being threatened. Yes, the education is being threatened by the development and expansion of artificial intelligence.
Mm.
Yes, which makes it possible for many things that we thought that people had to go to school to learn for them to be able to execute the job. Now you no longer need that, you know, level of education to have access to that information or that knowledge. So that a person who is not that, not let's say somebody who's not educated to university level can actually produce something that is that a university degree was required for before. For example, journalism. If you want to be a journalist, you go to school and you have to learn to write pretty well, so that
Mhm.
your idea that you want to transmit to the readers or listeners is, transmitted
Understandable.
efficiently and
Yeah,
unambiguously.
yeah.
But ChatGPT can write your newspaper article for you much better and faster than you can yourself. And things like legal profession.
Yeah.
They Most of what they do, actually, a lawyer does, is produce documents of different sorts. Well, it would take a lawyer maybe, let's say, half hour to draft a letter for you to send to somebody, an official kind of letter. The chat GPT can do it for you in 30 seconds. It's just as good. Yeah. So
So,
so things are in a bit of flux as to say, what will the middle class do? What jobs and roles there will be for the people who now occupy the middle class? For example, if you look at a bank, it's pretty easy for a bank to give you a loan without talking to anybody. If your bank running the thing on AI or on the blockchain, yeah, the bank, the computer knows you because you have your bank account there. It knows what work you do. It knows what income you make. It knows when you deposit, how much you deposit, how often you take money out, all that sort of stuff. It knows that already. If you want a loan for $5,000, you can just ask the computer, I want a loan for $5,000, blah, blah, blah. The computer will just run through your records that they have there
Check your
and
credit
says,
score
right,
and
and so on. Yeah, you qualify for $5,000. Don't you want 10,000 instead?
upselling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then he just puts 10,000 or whatever into your account, and there you have the loan.
We haven't reached that level in
Oh, we'll
Dominica.
soon be there.
We'll soon be there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, it could be done now.
You're confident
Yes,
in that?
absolutely.
Wow.
It's just that people are always hesitant about these kinds of new things to trust them to make the decisions. But as long as the thing has all the information, and it does have all the information, because when you go to open a bank account, you have to put all of this stuff
All of
where
this
you
thing,
work,
yeah.
blah, 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 how much money you make, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, whether you're married, whether you have children, whether, etc., etc. So it knows you pretty good. Better than the bank manager, actually. They can give you a loan. Yeah, so you probably would only really need to see some person if you go in there to ask for $5 million to do some, some kind of project or
But
the other.
in the interest of time, there's another question I would want to ask for the AI,
Mhm.
but in the interest of time, I suspect we will have to delve into that at
Yeah,
another opportunity.
sure.
But looking at what's happening now, Mark, globally, how do global shifts in trade, and there's a lot of shift in trade happening recently,
Hmm.
but how does a global shift in trade, remote work technology, impact opportunities for Dominica's middle class to thrive and diversify their incomes?
Okay, well, trade takes place in different things. Okay, physical goods that move from one place to the other. That's
Mm.
trade. Then you have trade in services. Like we are kind of big on trade in services in terms of tourism services is an export. We export in tourism services. People who don't live here buy tourism services from us. However, we are part of a chain. And what has been happening in the tourism business there is that more and more of the revenue that is paid by the tourist goes to some middleman or the other who is not in Dominica.
Mm.
Okay, so the part of the development of the technology is that if you're not in the right place in the chain, you are losing out. For example, you might have a room that you sell your room for $100 a night. Okay, you put up your website and so on, and you're ready to do business. Well, you will soon find out that there are these online tour operators who, when somebody puts in their hotel in Dominica, bam, Expedia, Booking.com, and on comes up. So although your hotel has its own website, it's kind of pretty difficult for a person to find it.
Find it.
So the person is going to book your hotel through one of these online tour operators. For that service, the online tour operator takes 15% of your $100. The person is going to pay with a card of some sort. The card issuing company and the local bank that handles some of the transactions going to take something close to 5% of the transaction again.
Mhm.
We don't own the aeroplane. You have to buy the ticket. We don't have gasoline selling. We import the gasoline. If the plane needs fuel, we have to import it and then sell it back to the airplane company. So that kind of revenue source is still there, But in point of fact, the percentage that we are getting is pretty low. And as things go on, it will tend to diminish because the people who are involved in the chain of tourism services are becoming more and more outside of our borders. Yeah, and then with respect to goods, well, you if you if you have in Dominica's case, we exported goods mostly, very little tourism, and we still do little tourism, not a lot. But we're trying to switch our economy to make tourism be a bigger player in the economy than it is. But when we exported goods to the United Kingdom, basically on the basis of our colonial status with the UK, where the UK essentially said, okay, we will not let other people sell bananas in our market. We'll reserve our market for you. Okay. So we were selling there not because bananas was the best thing we could do. It was because it was the market that was available to us. And as soon as the market, the WTO rules came into force and people started do, do, referring trade back to the WTO rules, the market in the UK disappeared, or the protection of the market disappeared. The market is still there, but the protection of the market disappeared, and our banana industry disappeared with it. Yes. So now Mr. Trump is in the White House, and he is doing some what you can only see retrograde stuff and not understanding what's going on. Um, well, if I'm saying he doesn't understand what's going on, is that United States economy has shifted from an economy that produced goods, things, physical things, to an economy that exports more services, particularly education, because the United States economies, the universities had a very high reputation as having some of the best universities in the world. Although now China is overtaking them, Chinese universities are ranked pretty high, and some of them higher than even the best American universities. And American universities themselves, they had lots of foreign students, that's particularly people doing postgraduate work and so on, or even undergraduate work. Okay, but now Mr. Trump says, don't come to our university because we don't want you to say this, that, and the other thing. So he's scaring away a good bit of the American sale of services, education services. Yes. So now that actually gives us an opportunity to expand our offering in education. Okay. As of now, we've kind of limited ourselves somewhat to only to medical education. And we know when Ross was here, for example, that they contributed a lot to our economy.
Yeah,
They,
30%.
yeah, they're no longer here. But the fact that the American government is now making it more complicated and difficult for foreign students to come to study in the United States gives us an opportunity to build more universities here to cater to people who want to further their education, especially if in the countries in which they are, there aren't enough schools and so on offering the training that they need. We can expand our offering there. For example, we talk about something that when we send our students abroad to study and so on, especially in the United States, well, up till now, lots of them don't come back. Okay? Well, if we had universities here, we do have one, All Saints University. The students are mostly from Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon, and so on. But a couple of them, when they finish their studies, they remain in Dominica and work in Dominica. So they help to build up our intellectual capacity in here. So we can expand, and we should try to expand our offering sale of education, because the and part of the reason we want to have sale of education and so on is because that's a high wage and high salary kind of profession, to be a teacher teaching at the university. Yes, and then the people who we've trained to study whatever engineering, this, that, and the other thing, who would be professors there. The people, and then you need administrative staff that are pretty well trained and so on, who will have good jobs there as well. You know, so we can and should try to expand on those there. And in terms of man making manufactured goods, well, we can seek out particular niches that where we can do manufactured goods, but I don't think we would have a large manufacturing base at all. You know, although we can do manufacturing, but we have to choose carefully what our
Which products?
which products and the processes to produce them.
Let's talk reform quickly.
Mhm.
What specific reforms in education, to your mind, or in
Oh,
entrepreneurship?
rock right there. Let's start with the education. First of all, it's a long time. We're way behind the ball. Every primary school child should know how to program a computer, how to write a computer program. Okay.
I had a feeling you was going to say that.
Well, yes, because
Yeah.
I said about the people in the middle class came up into the middle class through education. Okay, by which we meant going to school, sitting there and writing with your pen and your paper and so on and so forth, and reading your books. Okay, and they were literate. Well, in the 21st century, now already, if you can't write a little computer program and so on, you are illiterate. So we don't want to have illiterate people. So we need to educate the primary school children, of whom we have less and less every year, but we need to educate them to be able to write a computer program and
Completely.
understand one when that's when it's written. So that, among other things, for example, if they license some computer program to do whatever work, they are able to modify it to suit their particular purpose. But you can only do that if you
If you
know
know.
how to write a program. And computer programming is no difficult, more difficult to learn than learning French. This is a language. Matter of fact, computer programming is actually described in the copyright law as literature, in the same category as books and so on, because it's you write it. It's a language, or languages, you learn the language and you write the computer code. Yeah,
Very
and
interesting.
that's it. So that's what I'm. Yeah, so that's one the main thing. The second thing, of course, is that everybody should learn music in primary school and secondary school, because not so much that they become musicians, it's because learning music teaches you how to do mathematics, because music is based on mathematics. Yes.
Mhm.
So, beyond the simple thing of knowing to play the music and make a nice song and so on, there you learn the mathematics.
So it strengthens that
Yes, right.
analytical
Yeah,
skill.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But what about reforms in entrepreneurship?
Well, entrepreneurship, that's something I find weird, that people are saying they're going to teach you to be an entrepreneur. Well, they can't teach you to be an entrepreneur. That's a kind of, in my opinion, nonsensical statement. They can teach you how to be a manager.
Yeah.
Okay, but an entrepreneur is a creative activity. I can't teach you how to be creative, whether you're creative or you're not.
Okay, point
Okay,
taken.
we what we can do is, especially people who have access to financing and so on, there is
Mm.
to be open to the idea that somebody comes with a new idea that nobody has done, and say, well, I have no idea what your thing really is, but it sounds interesting. And if you want to do it, I am willing to risk some money with you to get your thing going. Yeah. But the idea of teaching people entrepreneurship seems to be a kind of fool's errand if you follow.
Okay.
I can teach you the principles of managing a business. Yes, but I can't teach you to be an entrepreneur. I don't see how people do that.
To your mind, what reforms can we embark on intellectual property rights to strengthen the middle class?
Well, first of all, everybody who is in business or wishes to be in business, participate in anything at all, must know something about intellectual property. Some minimum amount you need to know, because more and more intellectual property is the thing that generates the most wealth and income.
Mm,
Yes, because just to give you an example, which people might not know, everybody uses WhatsApp.
mhm.
And now WhatsApp is owned by Meta, which
Meta,
is
Facebook.
Facebook and so on. You know how much the Facebook paid for it? Make a guess. They didn't produce it. Somebody else, two other guys produced that. I think one of them was a
I'm
Ukrainian
guessing
actually.
because of its popularity, I'm guessing 200 mil.
200 million. 19 billion American dollars.
I was way off on that.
That is about 10 years ago or
Yeah,
so, right?
thereabouts.
Yeah, yeah. 19
Yeah.
billion dollars. We didn't all it requires is that the persons who did it had training and then use their imagination to say, yeah, we can set up this thing where people can communicate over the internet, both by voice and by text. And it catches on and people are using it all over the world and they bam, $19 billion. Mhm.
So there's major opportunity now.
Yes, but we have to jump on it, and we have, with the whole IT thing, we kind of too late. For example, I've said that on a podcast that I do with Tim Dura there, where we had a session on artificial intelligence. Well, we had a fair number of young people employed in customer service, in remote customer service. Well, the AI has effectively eliminated their jobs. You know, I don't know how many, and but by the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if there are no more jobs in Dominica for that kind of
For that
service.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, ChatGPT 5, by the way, just been released earlier this week. Upgrade, right?
We have to, given the opportunity, I will
Mm,
be reaching out to you again.
yeah,
You need to dissect that AI revolution,
yeah,
you know, because there's a lot of debate going on with
exactly,
AI, the
exactly,
labor force, trade unions.
exactly.
So
And on copyright, lots of
and
discussions
copyright,
about copyright.
intellectual,
Yeah, there are
intellectual property.
lots of lawsuits about copyright and AI and so on.
We at another time we will have to look into this. Let's just say thank you for coming, but your closing remarks, we have to move on to our next guest.
Well, my closing remark is to say that our middle class is pretty good, and we should not minimize the fact that we have the Gini coefficient in Dominica is pretty low, which means that we have a relatively small um, level of inequality of incomes in Dominica. Yeah. But what you have to do, of course, is to strive consciously to drive it to zero,
Yeah,
right? Okay. So there is no inequality, so that incomes are closer between the wealthy and the not so wealthy.
fantastic, Mark.
And hopefully, the way we do that is not by making the wealthy less wealthy, but by making those who are not wealthy wealthier. You follow?
McCarthy Marie, we appreciate you again. We're going to need to talk again on a slightly different topic, but excellent contribution this afternoon. And I thank you for taking the time.
Okay, thank you, Richie. No problem.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, good.
Dominica, that was our good friend McCarthy Marie. This man has contributed so much to the island of Dominica in the arts, creative arts. He is an economist, music business entrepreneur, and of course, intellectual property expert. Stay tuned to the big station. Let's take a break, and you can be sure we'll be right back after this.
But do you really have money to burn? What about your commitments? Have you paid your bills? What about your telephone bill, your light bill, your water bill? What are you going to use to pay your loan? A truck of stones? MCCU wants you to continue to make wise financial decisions that will not leave you stressed. Think of your commitments. Commit to your commitments. Commit to saving. And then you can have some money to burn.
The government of Dominica has declared a national firearm amnesty. If you have an illegal gun, now is the time to turn it in. No charges, no questions. If you know someone with an unlicensed firearm, say something without saying your name. Crime Stoppers Dominica keeps you completely anonymous. Call 1-800-8477. That's 1-800-TIPS. Your voice stays hidden, but your action could save lives. Let's protect our island together. A message from Crime Stoppers Dominica and this station.
Carifesta is the whole region looking good. Whole road is runway. It's in the way we walk. It's the way we talk. It's the way we move. We're ready for the world. And when we step out and pose just so, it's pure style and fashion. Look away! Come for Carifesta 15 in Barbados. Book your stay now at visitbarbados.org/Carifesta.
Yes, we're back, and we just spoke with McCarthy Marie on the trajectory of the middle class and the Dominican economy. Excellent contribution from Mr. Marie. Good afternoon to Tyrone Nicholas, Patricia Zamore, Peter Carbon, Miss Henrietta Robinson. Good afternoon. My next guest is just stepping in the studio. Another powerful man of the soil, an expert in finance. He is a financial consultant, senior financial investigator, as well as the former director of the Financial Intelligence Unit in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Ronald Landa. We're going to be talking on the development of our economy. And I'm sure that Mr. Landa will educate us and the various ways that can be done. By way of introduction, let's say hello to Mr. Ronald Landa. Good afternoon and welcome to the big station.
Good day, Ricky. Richie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a very humble comrade. I've been around for a while in Dominica.
Yeah.
I've gone through the system. It seems to have been my calling to stay in Dominica.
Yeah.
I did a lot of foreign education, but I spent most of my professional life in Dominica. So I understand the Dominican economy very well. The initial area that I was trained in was tourism hotel management. As a teenager, I went to the Bahamas, Nassau, Bahamas, to study tourism hotel management. And I returned to Dominica. I worked for a while at various hotels. My major was in tourism, but I could not get a job in the tourist board. So I did some acrobatics. And I started to do economics and accounting. Did my A levels and went to University of West Indies, where I did a BSc in economics and accounting. And returned to Dominica and was employed at the policy formulation section of the Ministry of Finance. There, I advised Mary Eugenia Charles for 4 years on fiscal and monetary matters of state. Interestingly, we had people who assisted me and guided me along, like Hodge Oliver, Gilbert Williams, Alec Lazar. Alec Lazar was one of the most outstanding guys. Whenever I did the budget speech, he used to send it to me to put my section in, or when we were doing the estimates, he always involved me. So I learned a lot in that particular area. I then went on to do an MBA in accounting, economics, and management at Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. I returned to the Ministry of Finance. And one of the major assignments that I did in the Ministry of Finance when I returned was the working paper for the re-engineered economic system program. So I understand that program very well. I did a lot of research, a lot of analysis. And at that time was Minister Timothy. And Mr. Timothy said that he wanted the paper in 2 weeks. I just come from doing my master's. I said, Mr. Timothy, no, you cannot get it in 2 weeks. I've got to do research, I've got to do analysis and give you quality work. And at the end of the day, he was very satisfied. The cabinet was also very satisfied. I moved to the NDC, and I must say that was most of my most productive years in the public service under the management of Mr. Gregoire. I was director of industry, and my focal areas was agro-processing, tourism plant development, information technology, and small business development. So I seem to have had a lot of formal education. I've been to conferences and seminars all over the world. The only place I've not been is Africa. All over the world. Just take a guess of somewhere. I've been there to seminars and conferences.
Italy.
Italy. Whenever I went there, whenever I went to those meetings, because I was so well organized, I always played a leadership role and gave Dominic a high level of representation. Consequently, I was able to attract a lot of technical assistance from those countries, from different entities. And we'll talk about that as we go along. I also was involved, I'm currently involved as a professor at the Dominica State College. I was involved as a professor at University of West Indies School of Continuing Studies. And I'm in my private practice where I do auditing, accounting, and other consultancy work.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Ronald Nanda, let's delve into this morning's, this afternoon, program. We're talking human capital development, Ronald, and the workforce readiness. Given Dominica's need to build a globally competitive workforce, what strategic investments in professional training and industry relevant work experience would you recommend to drive long-term economic resilience and productivity in our country?
Well, what I would like to do is to put things in a national context first.
Yeah.
To look at our current economic situation. And that's information from the ECCB. I would like to look at things at our debt, our GDP, our debt to GDP, our debt. And I'm just looking for 3 years, and there seems to be a consistency. Our debt in 2022 was 1,723 million. Our GDP in that same year was 1,682 million. So it means our debt was greater than our GDP. As we went on to the subsequent years, there was a reduction in debt. So at the end of 2024, our debt to GDP ratio is 92%. So 92% of our GDP represents our debt. And this is a very unfavorable position. This is a very unproductive area, and this is something we need to deal with. I saw in the budget, the minister said that the debt to GDP ratio was in the range of 89. And the way we try to get it is between 60 and 65 for it to be very comfortable. Now, the GDP is the value of goods and services that you produce in an accounting period. And our GDP, a large contribution comes from agriculture. And I don't see it in Dominica. A lot of Haitians are involved, so there's a lot of outflow from agriculture. Construction is another major area in our GDP. And who's doing most of the constructions in Dominica? Chinese.
Foreign firms.
Foreign firms. So a lot of the money is just going, yes, you're recording the growth, the added value in the year, but this money is going out. The retail sales, retail and wholesale sales, another very big area of your GDP. And who's doing all the retail sales in Dominica now? Chinese. So here again, you've got some significant leakages in your GDP that would have an adverse impact on your economy. The multiplier effect would be reduced. And also, a very important area is the impact on social security. Social security is a Ponzi scheme. Social security survives based on the contributions that current employed persons are making to pay persons who are retired. So you reach a stage now where more people are retired than people are contributing. And the people who are making the money in the country, the Chinese, the Haitians, especially the Chinese in construction, it's clear and everybody knows that. They do not contribute to social security.
Yeah. We would have to look at that.
Very, very, very seriously. I can understand if your payment, because the people that we get, most of the people are low quality people. And you can see in terms of the projects that they do, the quality of projects. You've got one or two technical people, but most of the people are low quality, ordinary guys, so they don't have the skill, and at the end of the day, the quality of the product is reduced. So if they're not earning sufficient money to pay taxes, no matter what you earn in Dominica, you must pay social security. And they're not paying social security, and social security is under a lot of pressure. Recently, I heard social security is involved in an education loan scheme. The aid bank is involved in it. I think the National Bank is also involved. And recently, because they're looking for ways to generate revenues. And in Dominica, there is very limited areas where you could invest to generate revenues. Very, very limited areas. So that's another very, very critical area. When you look at our CBI, and that's an area that I spent a lot of time on in terms of reviewing the program, what we call the Reengineered Economic System Program. I was the author of that. So I understand that process very well. But we reach a stage where $8 billion of CBI funds are unaccounted for. Unaccounted for, and the matter is now in the court system. We are told that because of the pressure, because of the lack of due diligence, the revenues that have been generated from the CBI is being reduced considerably. But 58% of our total revenue for the next financial year, amount of $635 million, we expect to get it from economic citizens. So we're in a very, very, very serious situation. And I can see a lot of negative economic indicators. The debt to GDP ratio is a negative economic indicator. The debt status, we should not have that particular debt status with the resources that we are generating from CBI. And government is still lending money from the bank to electoral reform, lending money from the Lottery Commission to light up the Windsor Park. So the government is still lending money. And our debt is very high. We've got CBI funds. We should be using the CBI funds to transform our economy and also to reduce our debt. But the debt status to ECDB is a very serious situation. The overdependency on CBI. We heard certain top government officials say, if not CBI, what?
Yeah, that's
if not CBI, what? People made that kind of statement. And we see for the next financial year, 50% of our total, 58% of our total revenue supposed to come from CBI funds. $635 million, which is very, very critical. Leakages in the GDP, I spoke about for the Chinese, earning money in Dominica, yes, it's recorded. Construction, the value added in construction is recorded, but there are significant leakages. And the impact on our economy and social security is another negative economic indicator that we need to pay attention to. What is really happening in Dominica now? Where are we going? We are in a very challenging state. We are in a very challenging state in Dominica. Because when we look at the areas of growth, agriculture to start with, what is our main export crop now in Dominica? What are the supporting crops? I remember as a young guy going to Newton Infant School on export days for citrus, used to be jumping over barrels to go to school. There were barrels all the way from the Newton factory all the way to the port for export. Then Elrose and Company came on, and there was a lot of export of lime and other citrus products. Then Bananas took over. And the Black Sikatoka came somewhere in early 2000, and Bananas just disappeared. However, St. Lucia found a way around the Black Sikatoka.
Yep.
And they continue exporting to the UK market. Now they export to other markets. But we need to very, very importantly identify a main export crop and other supporting crops to go along with it. And this is a negative economic indicator. When you're not exporting, what are we exporting? What are we saying? And you can see clear evidence, another negative economic indicator, the usage of the Deepwater Harbor. What activity is taking place at the Deepwater Harbor? I go up and down at least 6 times a day, and I see around 10 to 20% occupancy. And I see a lot of empty containers. One of the boats I see most frequently now at the Deepwater Harbor is the boat bringing in the cement to do the adjustment for the airport project.
Yeah.
I don't know, and you, sometime when you're on your programs, you must get an engineer to give us some more insights, more understanding of what's happening in this particular project. Then the marginal agricultural exports that we're doing now, we're using the jetty in Portsmouth. We used to have a jetty in Roseau, and we graduated from a jetty to a Deepwater Harbor, but we seem to have gone back. We seem to have gone back to the jetty status. We look at the farm access roads. The farm access roads, the farmers are telling you they are deplorable. They cannot get to their farms. It's very difficult. So if you're looking at growing agriculture, you must also pay attention to the farm access roads. The critical technical support for agriculture in terms of agricultural stations. You had an agricultural division in an agricultural station in the Botanical Gardens. I raised up in the big yard around Bafford area. So Botanical Gardens was my playground. And we know Botanical Gardens as a station. When I went to grammar school and first time we had Botanical Gardens, the first time I know about Botanical Gardens, I only know it at station because it was an experimental station with all different types of fruits and vegetables and so on. And people were there, and the extension unit of the Ministry of Agriculture was located in the gardens. They were there in a practical way, and they take stuff out to the farmers come and they interact with the farmers. Now, where is the Division of Agriculture, the Extension Service? They're in a concrete building in Fokole, right next to the Pottersville Savannah. So what kind of support are they giving to the farmers in a very practical way? What about the other agricultural stations? Those in La Plaine, in Granby, in Layo, because farmers need that kind of technical support to move on. And in terms of the supervision, my father used to be an extension officer. And my father, when he leaves in the morning, he comes back till in the evening. Because he was doing so well with the farmers, every time he comes home with stuff from the farm. And even when his mileage had run out, he was still going out there and working with the farmers and ensuring things are being done properly. But now, guys tell you since their mileage run out, they don't go anywhere. And guys don't spend enough time on the farm. So much so that our Haitian associates, they are over-fertilizing, over-chemicalizing, and cutting our trees because they are interested in short-term products. But because they're not supervised, you have that nonsense happening in Dominica. And this is something that we need to arrest, because you see our rivers, the water flowing in the rivers are going down because of the trees that are being cut all over the place. The trees would have the ability to hold the water together. So we have a problem in that area. The other major area that we were looking at, and it was being built up, especially when the Taiwanese were here, was the domestic fish farms. You had prawn farms all over the place. And those fish farms, those local prawn farms, the quality was so good that they were exported to Matic and Guadeloupe. And they have just totally disappeared. The final area I want to talk about in agriculture, before I go to agro-processing, is sea fishing. We are still fishing in canoes in 2025. By now, we should have graduated to bigger boats that can stay out in the sea for at least a week. I recall I made an investment with a brother in Point Michel. We had a fish bar and we were doing very well. And the guy used to go out to fish and bring the fish to sell at the fish bar. And the man tell me, Levi ni si ze mon las. Moni pou vi an di da. Po so ka mode, me mon las. He's tired because he's been out since early morning and now the fish is biting. He has to come in. But if you have a boat and we could experiment with that maybe in 3-4 areas and let's see how it works and then we'll continue developing on it. It stays out there for a week and two and the canoes go to pick up and bring in until the big boat comes in. It's been done in Barbados, in the Martinique and Guadeloupe. It's been done in that way. But Dominica, we have stayed in that archaic way of fishing and consequently it's having a negative impact on our production. Agro-processing is another area, another major area that we can use to grow our economy. Agriculture, agro-processing. And we've seen in agro-processing over the last 20 years thereabout, because again, given my background in the division of industry, that was one of my focal areas, agro-processing. We see the disappearance of Bella Products. Bella Products was exporting containers out to Dominica. So that's a negative economic indicator. We saw the reduction of operations, people like Dominica Colgate Palmolive. When Dominica Colgate Palmolive was in Dominica, they saw Dominica Coconut Products as a competitor. So they came with a hostile takeover, took over Dominica Coconut Products, grew it to a level, made their money, and stepped out. But we were not astute enough when they were stepping out to step in and ensure we continue the operation. But when Coconut Products, Colgate Palmolive was exporting stuff, the stuff wasn't coming to Roseau. They had their own facility down in the Mao area. And that's the volumes that were being done. Luckily, one of the Nassif boys have resuscitated to, I would say, a minimal level. Benjo Simos. Where is Benjo Simos now? Benjo Simos used to send stuff containers out of Dominica. I'm not too sure where he's operating. Somebody told me he's operating from his home, but he still has products in there. But this is somebody with the ability that can grow, because we need to find a way in Dominica of producing goods, and earlier on I heard about services that we can export. That's the only way we can grow our economy. Because if we are dependent only on the small local market, it will not be sufficient to encourage a critical level of production. So we've got to involve the foreign market and get stuff out there. Let money come in so we can invest and we can grow our economy. But if you don't do that, we find it a lot of problems. Dominica Essential Oils. There's another very, very interesting operation that was selling out barrels and barrels of oil, of essential oils. Now the operation has been reduced. One very important area, very, very important area that we are blessed with is water. We've got an abundance of water. And we see Lubia Waters here with a lot of export sales. Trois Pitons is still around. Dominica is currently importing bottled water from Jamaica, from Trinidad, blue water, and other water-based products like soft drinks and beers, soft drinks from St. Lucia and beers from St. Vincent. What is really happening? When we've got such a good base, a good quality of water in Dominica, that we're importing bottled water, more importantly, we're importing plastic bottles, which we have to deal with in our landfill. And we've got water in abundance. So why can't we work together, get something going so that we can have more water production in Dominica? Very, very, very critical. The other area of growth, or important area of growth, is tourism. We used to have a brand called Nature Island. I'm not too sure where we are with this brand. We saw the disappearance because of the disappearance of agricultural farms, the bananas farm, the citrus farm, the cocoa palms. What we have when you travel around Dominica, all you see is bush. Before, in the earlier days, in the 80s and 90s, when you travel around, tourists travel around, they see different plantations of coconuts, different plantations of bananas, and it was impressing them more. There are certain areas where they were stopping and picking oranges and grapefruits. They were allowed to do that. And this is where we supposed to be going. We look at the quality of our roads. Our roads are very poor. You travel the roads of Dominica. There are certain roads. When I go beyond Mao, when I go to Portsmouth, that that piece of road going down there, there are one or two bad patches, but it's reasonably good. When you leave Mao, when you come into Roseau, the road is very critical. And then you come into Roseau, and it's worse. Our capital, how could we allow Roseau to get in such a deplorable state? The quality of roads in Roseau, the intersections, the drains, the sidewalks, the dilapidated buildings all over the place. What's really happening? And if we're trying to sell a tourism product, we want when people come, when they look around, they drive in, they're looking around, they see pleasant things around. Very, very important. So that's a area that we've got to look at for us to improve on our areas of management. Site management. Site management. How do we manage the sites? And something critical happened in Dominica, where in the heartland, in our tourism heartland, we've put down a geothermal plant. And the geothermal plant is going on and on. Are they compatible? Is the geothermal plant compatible with the tourist sites we have in that area? And nobody has done a study to look at that. We look at a tram project in the same area, a very elaborate tram project. We had a tram project previously. A new one is coming on, a very elaborate one. But you're in a sulfuric area. The maintenance costs, I hope that they're taking that into consideration. Tourism plant management. When we look at tourism plant management, we see certain hotels are well organized and doing very well, like Fort Young, Jungle Bay, Secret Bay, and there are a few others doing very, very well. And maybe because of the management and so on, we need to learn from them what's really happening. When you look at Garaways, right there on the bayfront, the first thing that people see when they come on cruise visits, what can we do to assist Garaway? You've got other entities like Anichi, Silver Beach Resort that got funds from CBI. What's happening with them? Intercontinental was built, and I understand Intercontinental has a lot of challenges. Range Development was involved in building an Intercontinental, and there are a lot of challenges in there. They're now going to be involved in building our marina. So let's see what happens there. Sports tourism. What's happening with sports tourism? What's happening with the Windsor Park Stadium? In the World Cup, we lost significant revenues. St. Vincent made 224 million, St. Lucia made 132 million, Antigua made 114 million from the World Cup. Dominica was scheduled to have games, but last minute, Dominica was taken off. What's really happening in there? The athletic stadium is another very critical area. We were told that we're going to have an athletic stadium by August of this year. What's really happening in the athletic stadium? In the honor of Miss Lafont. This is very critical. And these are the growth areas that we need to manage properly if we want to see our economy transform. In tourism, the final area is cultural tourism. Cultural tourism, I was involved in starting up the World Creole Music Festival. I'm one of the pioneers of the festival. And the vision that we had to build a cultural industry to support tourism and to contribute to the economy of Dominica has now been reduced into 3 nights of fete. I see this year they're trying to bring back in large quantities our local performers. But I'm not too sure what impact it's going to have on our cultural industry this year. The access, the tourism access is another area, a critical area that we need to look at. You've got international airport. 25 years it took us to develop an international airport. And in the reverse fashion, we got the money first, the $1 billion, and then we started constructing. You never heard anything about any analysis, any research, any designs. You had to see any designs, any research, any analysis. And this is a serious problem. Canefield Airport. Canefield is no longer an airport, it's a land port. No aircrafts come there again. People come and they deliver their stuff there, and the stuff is taken to Melville Hall to fly away. What is the problem? As a student, I use Canefield Airport very regularly. As a professional, I use Canefield Airport very regularly. What is happening at Canefield Airport? I noticed recently it's a fat area. The bikers are there some time ago, and another jam there some time ago. It has been trying. What is really happening there? What is really happening? We have spoken about a marina. There's some talk about a marina being built and they're breaking ground and so on. But Range Development is involved in building the marina. Range Development built Intercontinental Hotel. Range development made a lot of money. Made a lot of money. Before one person walked into the hotel, range development made so much money that one of our ambassadors in the US who claimed that he was involved in the deal wanted his 5%. And he was taking the matter to court. He finally must have gotten his 5% because we had nothing about that again. But let's see how we go to the marina, how we organize the marina. The cruise facility was built by Eugenia Charles in the 80s. We still operated the cruise facilities on Dame Eugenia Charles Boulevard and in a deplorable Roseau. So what are we doing with those areas here to develop our tourism industry? The final area that I want to talk about here is information technology. Information, give the status, and then we look forward how we could improve on what we're doing. You look at information technology, and we insisted on staying on the low end of information technology, negative in economic indicator. Clear Harbor, we stayed with information processing. And what happened? What happened with Clear Harbor? Clear Harbor is practically closed now. A lot of young people who are employed at Clear Harbor are now at their homes. When I come to the way forward, I will give you some suggestions as to some of the things that we can do to improve on our information processing based on my experience at the National Development Corporation.
Excellent. In terms of, let's say, anti-corruption and financial oversight, in terms of recommendations, as a former director of the Financial Intelligence Unit, what mechanisms come to mind? Or what mechanisms do you think should be enhanced to ensure financial accountability in our country, reducing corruption risks within major public projects, and even around the CBI program?
Yes. When I was a director of industry, I spent over 10 years, 10 to 12 years as director of the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit.
Mm-hmm.
And we focus on money laundering and other financial crimes, maybe mainly terrorist financing and money laundering. And the areas we were dependent on is the current legislation, the established legislation. And that established legislation, we're improving it all the time to ensure we met international requirements. And I was able, whilst I was there, to get external funding, to get a consultant to improve on our regulation. Another area that you have to pay close attention to, that if you want to deal with those areas, not only the legislation, you need to have the capacity. The local capacity. And I was able to invest, going out there to conferences and seminars and speaking on behalf of Dominica in a very positive way. I was able to get programs and courses for my officers. I had around 3 or 4 officers, and those guys were always out doing training. So we had a certain level of competencies within the FIU.
Yeah.
And finally, we were able to build strategic alliances with not only regional organizations, but international organizations. So if we didn't live a matter, we could get international organizations, regional organizations to work with us. When we reach a particular stage in dealing with the matter, then we can bring in our legal expert and take the matter to court. We took a few matters to court in my time, and that retarded the corruption and the areas of financial crimes, especially when they knew that there was a functional unit. People were there, they heard about us. We always was in the news saying what we were doing, and people saw that there was an entity in Dominica, although very small, but well-staffed. The staff was well-trained, and we were able to deal with those areas in a very effective way.
Wow. So your let me just ask you off the bat, what's your conclusion or your classification for the current financial intelligence unit?
Well, it used to be a combination of civilians and police officers. You only have police officers in there, and I have not been able to really assess the financial intelligence unit. But the way I became a regional consultant when I was the director of financial intelligence unit.
Yeah.
When the Caribbean anti-money laundering program was going around doing programs, I used to come as a specialist for FIUs. I went to the ECCB, I went to Antigua, I went to other islands,
Wow.
doing training, being there with them because they saw. I went to the meetings, I spoke on behalf of Dominica. They found that I could make that level of contribution to the Caribbean anti-money laundering program, and we were able to move with them and get training for our guys.
Wow.
But I'm not too sure at this material point in time what's happening in the FIU. My focus is really on my private practice and survival, living a decent life. That's what my focus is on, living a decent life. That's what I focus on. But the other area that I would want to go, now I've given the status of the financial positions in Dominica and the different areas. And this interaction we have in there, Richie, we could have that over several sessions.
Yeah.
So I try to press it as much as possible. And I'm familiar with my lectures and so on and so on and so on. I could go on and on and on because I have a wealth of knowledge, And as I said to you, whenever I come to discuss a subject matter, I do my research. Yeah. I do my research, and that's very important, being prepared. You always have to be prepared for whatever assignment you're going on.
Correct.
You don't come off the cuff. Because look, I have a short sleeve, I can't come up, I can't scribble anything on my cuff. I will not see it, And that's one thing I have an appreciation for you, Richie. The upliftment of this program, the people that you bring in to contribute to the program. It's very impressive. It's not looking at common things happening in Dominica. It's not looking at the BEF in Dominica, what's happening in the street, what's happening there, what's happening.
I have no interest in that.
You bring in resource persons continuously to make substantial contributions to the program, and I commend you highly for that. So now I have stated the status in the growth sector, in agriculture, in agro-processing, in tourism, in information technology, those 4 major areas. How do we move forward? How do we move forward? And the important thing that we are missing in Dominica, very important, is an integrated development plan. Anything that you do, you need to have a plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You must have a plan. You must look down 20 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 5 years in a more detail down the road, where you would like to be. Because you cannot do everything one time. And in Dominica, our budget, which is supposed to be an implementation plan, is the same thing as a development plan. So within 1 year, within one budget statement, you've got a lot of information pertaining to the year under consideration and for future years. The future years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, supposed to be contained in an integrated development plan. Initially, I was talking about an economic development plan because of my area of training. But then when the integrated development plan was introduced under the regime of Pierre Charles, he brought some experts together and they discussed it and they developed that particular plan. I saw, and it had to deal with other non-productive area, with health, with education. It's integrated. Everything is in there. And I think that's the way we should go. We should go looking at an integrated development plan, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And on a year-to-year basis, we use as a budget, as the implementing agency for the plan. So when we come to the budget, we have the plan already. We just say, this year, this is what we're going to be doing. Because our objective in 5 years to be there. So this year, this is what we're doing in order to fulfill our objective in 5 years.
Some persons might say that, in fact, the manifesto of the particular party taking the reins of government after election is that integrated plan.
No, the manifesto can be very ambitious. A lot of stuff is put in the manifesto sometimes that are not achievable. But you need to, and most times it's done by politicians. You need to bring technicians together, a group of technicians together. And you put it in detail, and you need technicians in all different areas, in economics, in education, in health, because the plan is integrated. It involves all different areas, in youth development, in corruption. You've got to address all those areas in the integrated development plan. Yes, you have your manifesto, and your manifesto is ready to sell you, to sell the party, to get the party in power. When the party gets in power with that manifesto, the party then now has to come, use the manifesto, some from the manifesto, and create that plan. Create that plan using the technicians in the government service and other technicians that are available to create that plan to say clearly, you are elected for 5 years. in 5 years, that's what we want to achieve. And every year when you go to the budget cycle, you come with an implementation. What are you going to implement in this year? Your implementation plan. But anytime you've got a budget, which is an implementation plan, and also a strategic plan looking in the future, you're into a lot of confusion. That is why persons were able to look at, see so many discrepancies in the budget this year. And it has always been so. It has been so for quite a while. And we need to graduate from that. We need to move on and have an integrated development plan to look in the future, be futuristic. And then in a practical way, on a year-to-year basis, we deal with the budget. Even when the guys come with the one-year plan of the budget, somewhere 6 months after the budget is passed, they come with supplementary estimates, adjustment to the budget.
Notice that for the more recent years.
Adjustment to the budget. So that in itself creates a particular problem. And in doing that, you go to, and for me and for purposes of this program, especially given the time limits, I focus more on the productive sectors, the growth sectors. I focus more on agriculture, agribusiness, tourism, and information processing. But you need to bring in all the other areas. Because of my expertise in that area, that's why I focus in this area. But you need to bring experts from education, from health, from community development, and we come all together and we put that plan and we say, in 5 years' time, what we want to education. In 5 years' time, how we want to see our hospital. How are we going to deal with our surgeons in the hospital in 5 years' time? In 10 years' time, and conceptually, what we'd like to have in 20 years' time. Okay? So, but for me, I focus more on the growth sectors, the productive sectors. And the first thing that you've got to do when you're doing the plan is to identify your core competencies. What are your natural blessings? What the Father has blessed you with? What Jehovah God has blessed you with? And for us, we've got fertile soil, frequent rainfall, rich natural environment, nature-based products, and more importantly, brilliant people. So how do we use those core competencies to create a competitive, distinctive advantage in agribusiness, be it primary agriculture, agro-processing, in tourism, natural, beautiful island. We've got good products, good natural-based products. How do we manage those products and maintain them? But we're not seemingly not maintaining those products good enough. And information technology, you cannot run away from that. AI is taking over the world. So artificial intelligence. So you've got to understand that. Your people need to understand that and need to see how they position themselves to deal with AI. Okay? Now, I would want to, and I see our time is running up there.
Approaching.
Yeah. So what I will do is very quickly look at the areas, the growth areas that I would want us to focus on. In agriculture, we need to have, and I'm putting it that way, but then we'll decide what we do in 1 year, what we do in 2 years, what we do in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. We need to have clearly defined land use plan. So with the land use plan, it's going to inform you where's the best place to grow your crops. We need a main agricultural crop. We need a driving force. And we don't have enough brilliant people in agriculture, given our soil type, to decide what is the main agricultural crop that we can grow, given the production and the marketing analysis. And to be able to get that out into the marketplace. The technical and physical critical support, the agricultural stations. If we're going to grow agriculture, we must reestablish our agricultural stations. Be it in Grand Bay, be it in Laplin, be it in Layo. I remember as a little boy, the Layo agricultural station, it focused on cocoa. And we used to call it the Cocoa Center. I raised up around the gardens, and so on. And when I go through the gardens, when I see the garden, it breaks my heart. How can we get back the gardens, the botanical gardens, to be a proper agriculture station? The support of agricultural crops for export and agro-processing, because you got to relate to agro-processing, your root crops, your citrus, your coconut, your bay leaves, your sea moss. How do you relate that together? When we look at the area of fisheries, we look at fisheries. Fisheries, we need to bring on an experimental basis. We need to come on an experimental basis with those larger boats. We cannot, and the government is giving fishermen canoes. They're sponsoring canoes for fishermen. So we're still primitive in our fishing style. And we need to graduate from that. So we need to experiment with at least 3 or 4 big boats. One in Maho, one in Newtown, one in Portsmouth, and see how we manage it. It comes to a central area for servicing, and we see how we manage the operation. It's very important if we want to develop the fisheries. Not only to satisfy ourselves, but also to export. We can export fishing. The type of fishes that we have, in when we had our base ponds in Dominica, we're exporting fishes. So we can also look at that. Then we come to agro-processing. For agro-processing, we've got to look at a detailed marketing and production analysis. We need to facilitate the private sector with technical assistance. Look, DCP. DCP is now producing limited products. How can we grow DCP in year 1, in year 2, to get back to where Dominica Colgate Palmolive was in a few years ago? How can we do that? How can we work with them? Benjo Simos. Benjo Simos, I understand he's at his home. How can we reestablish him? He was in the Cadenfield Industrial Estate. And Benjo was sending out containers of CMOS out of Dominica. One of the limitations was he was importing the CMOS. And we were thinking of putting a CMOS farm down, not Castle Bruce, that village there with the water is very low, past Wesley in the back there. The village doesn't come to mind right away. No, it's a seafront. It doesn't come to mind. We're looking at assisting in putting CMOS farms in there. I understand that certain people like Kalibishi, very good, Dominica, very good, man. Kalibishi. And we're looking at there because the way there is the seawater, we're looking at doing CMOS farms there. So you get these raw products right away from Dominica. Dominica Essential Oils. Dominica Essential Oils, importing oil out of Dominica. Very important product that is used in perfumes, in colognes, and so on. And whilst I was at the NDC, I was able to mobilize the Center of Development of Industry, that's a technical arm of the European Union, to come down to give us technical assistance to see how we could add value to the oil in Dominica, how we could make perfumes and colognes. And the guy physically came to Dominica and started discussing the management of Dominica Essential Oils and Spices. What has happened to that? You don't see anything like that on the shelf. You don't see nothing like that on the shelf. So you wonder really what's happening in that particular area. And we hear about government giving support recently to a lot of small size agro-processors, and which is good. But we need success stories. You need leaders. You need persons. If you've got a particular area of focus, you need 2 or 3 persons up front. And other persons can pattern on them and grow accordingly. The water, I always speak about water. I heard Thompson speaking about water the other day there. Yeah, and water is such a great opportunity for us. How could we grow Twapito? How could we facilitate the establishment of water bottle operations? And there is a CARICOM facility. If you got a natural product, you are able to protect that natural product for a limited amount of time. How can we use that facility to protect our water products? So we can tell Jamaica, tell Trinidad, for the next 6 months or the next year, you cannot send water to Dominica. But it's a limited time period because you want to export your water too. So what you want for yourself, you also want for other people. The bulk water, we tried with bulk water, but I have a preference of bottled water. Bottled water is on the high end, and we need to look to see how we can get the bottled water industry going. Not only Twapito, but like we had Twapito, and before Twapito, we had Loubier. Loubier was doing very well. And the thing that the Loubier, the Dominica breweries and beverages were also doing, they were doing beers, and they were doing Guinness using our local water. How can we get that going again? What was wrong with Josephine Gabriel that they got out of bottling of soft drinks in Dominica? What's the problem? They were employing a lot of people. They had a soft drink factory. Now they're distributors. What can we do to take care of those particular areas. Very, 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 very important.
Critical.
Very, very critical and as we move forward. And we look at tourism. We look at the tourism-based product. We've got the nature island image which we need to preserve. But there must be a strategic alliance with agriculture to see how we can transform all the bush that we have all around Dominica into agricultural farms. Site management. How do we deal with the site management? And I spoke earlier about the geothermal plant in the tourism heartland. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? You know, and all the bad roads and the rubbish. There need to be a discussion with government. Discussion with government as to how we can deal with that. More importantly, the rehabilitation of Roseau. It hurt my heart because I'm a Roseau man. I raised in Roseau. My father is from Lapland. I used to go to Lapland on vacation.
You saw it from the beginning.
From the beginning. Roseau. I walk around Roseau and so on. I know Roseau. And I'm seeing how Roseau is now. It hurts my heart. What hurts my heart even more is the botanical gardens. I look at the state of the botanical gardens. I used to play my football and my cricket on the lawns. And when the guard run after us, we go at the back of station and we enjoy ourselves. On oranges, on grapefruits, all kind of things used to be in the back there. Yeah. And after we enjoy ourselves, we go on the power to bathe. In the river, we go there to bathe. By the time we get home, our parents have our meals there. We don't want nothing to eat. We're well organized because the agricultural stations, that's where they do the things. And when they say we're looking so good and running around after eating the stuff at the back there, give it to the farmers. We're the guinea pigs, and we didn't know that. You know? So they were giving it to the farmers, and we were going very well here. Now, we look at the tourism access. The tourism access. And we know the international airport is coming on. What's the time frame for that? What's happening to the restoration of Kenfield? What's the time frame for the marina? And more importantly, the cruise facility. I remember in the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, we heard of St. Kitts in cruise arrival. St. Kitts, if you go to St. Kitts, there's nothing to see in St. Kitts. Nothing to see other than Fort Thomas, nothing to see in St. Kitts. But St. Kitts built Port Zante, which is a cruise ship facility where you have all activities in there. And St. Kitts is now enjoying arrival of over 1 million cruise ship visitors a year. And Dominica is in the range of 300,000, where we're ahead of them. So what are we doing to deal with that particular area? The tourism plant management. We've got some exemplary facilities. As I mentioned, Fort Young, Jungle Bay, Secret Bay. What are their key success factors? What is Sam Raphael doing that other persons cannot do? Because Sam seems to be a very bright entrepreneur. The Nassif boys, what are they doing in Secret Bay, in Fort Young? That other persons cannot do, that Gary cannot do, that Anichi and Silver Beach Resort cannot do. We need to learn from those guys and see how we can develop those particular areas. Then we look at sports tourism, how we can use our sportsmen to promote Dominica, how we can bring in persons, different sporting activities, be it at our stadium or cricket stadium, or the athletic stadium that has been planned. How can we bring in persons to have activities in Dominica? Because we don't know when last we had a Carifta. We never had a Carifta game in Dominica. St. Lucia, Antigua, all those persons, and there's a lot of activities. And what is very close to my heart is the World Creole Music Festival, cultural tourism. And the World Creole Music Festival, where it's supposed to have been after the first 4 years, it is now 3 nights of fete. And a lot of people from abroad are coming in and earning the money from the festival. Where the intention was to employ, yes, we have to bring in persons to boost up the festival, but most of it should be Dominicans, Dominican bands.
That money should
circulate, and the multiply effect would take effect in there. But we don't have that there. And we need, and the final area that I want to speak about is the resources to take care of those activities. And the resources to take care of those activities, first resource that we need to look at is the CBI funds. We need to take a close look at the CBI funds, especially the $8 billion that we cannot account for. We need to look at that very closely.
That requires a specific program by itself. But some years ago, I did an investigation for another media company. And I remember going to the unit, the CBI unit, in Dominica. And I was telling the secretary at the time, I believe Nanton was a chair at that time. And I remember telling the secretary I wanted to speak to the chairperson, but he was out of state at the time. And I remember asking her for data regarding the names and the numerical figure of the amount of CBI citizens that we have uh, for a period of about 5 years. And she couldn't give me that information. And she referenced the SRO. But I told her in St. Lucia at that time, um, legislation permitted journalists to get that information. It wasn't a secret. So I asked her, what's the secret about? Because if you're a citizen, if I'm a citizen of America, you can just type my name and it tells you, it tells you understand that I'm a citizen, I live here, and even if you don't want to give the address, but at least the name and the confirmation that, okay, Ronald Lander is now a citizen of Dominica, that should not be a secret. What's the secret about? Now we're seeing the exact thing I'm talking about.
Yes.
You're seeing the UK authorities and the US authorities since after this OCCRP investigation. That they are now mandating that the identity of the person should not be kept a secret, to the point where the name should not be changed. And there are certain
tolerating that.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
So now I say this to say, in terms of CBI, I never understood certain things we did as a nation regarding that specific program for the past 20 years. Because even when it came to the funds, and I understand the concept of the housing option, what I didn't understand about that was the fact that the funds had to go to an escrow account. Because looking at the laws of our country, it mandates that anything, meaning that it could be this mic, it could be whatever belongs to the state, whatever asset belongs to the state, Ronald, that you sell as a government or transact, whatever word you want to use, and you get currency for that. That currency shall go into the coffers of the state. It doesn't say maybe. It doesn't say if you want. It says shall. In other words, it must go there. That didn't happen, Ronald.
Definitely. And when I did my regional program, that's something we paid attention to. And we had specific provisions to live that. But recently there, or due diligence, the persons involved, and I volunteered. I said, look, I have done a lot of research in that area, and I can assist, especially when I was at the FIU. I tried my best to get involved in various ministries. I applied 3 times for permanent secretaries. And I saw little girls who were never in the service, who don't have my qualification, appointed as permanent secretaries. And I'm there wanting to make my contribution to Dominica, because Dominica is at my heart. So this is the first area, the CBI. Then we look at efficient and improved operations, where you can generate some revenues and so on. And you look at cost management, and you look at the salary bill of government. Nearly every person who have ran for politics in Labour Party are employed by the government in one way or the other. Another trend that you see developing, a lot of retirees, because of who they support, they are retained in the government service. And this increases the salary bill. And if you increase the salary bill and you still don't have output, so you're in a worst of situation. The last area of financing that I would like to raise is developmental bonds. And for developmental bonds, you've got to have a high level of credibility. And I'm thinking in the initial stages, interest-free, non-refundable. But you need to have high credibility. And we'll sell that to Dominicans living out of Dominica. We say we need resources to grow Dominica. You're living out of Dominica. You buy a bond for $100. And when you get the copy of you can put it on your wall. That's my contribution to Dominica. How many you've bought? Put it on your wall and show that's my contribution. But the government has to have high credibility. So people know that when they invest in those bonds, the money is going into very specific sectors. When they come home, They will see a difference in their particular country. But notwithstanding, we cannot increase our debt. We should not increase our debt burden. I spoke about the leakages already in GDP, and the debt to GDP was 100%. It's come down a little bit. We need to control our debt ratio, or debt to GDP ratio. And consequently, we need to control our debt. There is much more I would like to say, Richie, but I know that the time is limited. The time is limited.
We have to do this.
Yeah,
again.
we need to focus. We need, at this point in time, we need to clearly focus on our economic situation, because our economic situation is very deplorable. It's not good. You look around, Richie. You go around, you go to shops and so on, and you see nobody but Dominicans and certain cashiers. You go to certain cashiers. I shop in way. I cash in way. You know, you don't see that kind of level of economic activity. All you see is a lot of vehicles on all roads, but you don't see economic activity.
So let me just ask you before you go. I know you have to leave. What is the optimal strategy then for financing national development? We're talking balancing the CBI revenues, balancing domestic resources, or looking at domestic resources. You touched on some of
developmental bonds.
Right.
That's another area that
Right.
I would looking at.
So while doing this, all while maintaining economic integrity, how can we develop a roadmap to
what you need to do is, first of all, on the political level, you need to have that political commitment from the politicians, whoever is the leader, who is the minister of finance, to have that commitment. And more importantly, you need to surround yourself with technicians that are independently thinking. So if the minister is going one way.
So not necessarily yes men.
No, that is the problem now.
Or yes women.
That's the problem, especially women. Yes women.
I see.
You know, and that's the major problem in Dominica. So this is what you want to do. And this is how you're going to do it. But sir, based on my training, based on my experience, this would be a better way to do it. And let's discuss. And we come with the best option every time. But now ministers, with their limitations, they make certain statements, they say certain things. And the permanent secretaries, because they are yes people, they go ahead. Just go ahead. And we just go around in a vicious circle.
So there's a need for, well, now you're touching not just on the economic aspect of things, Ronald, but now you're touching on actually the social aspect. Because
very, very important.
You're talking about people having control over their cognitive abilities and their emotions.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence.
Yes. And that normally happens when a government stays in power for extended period. They stay in power for extended period. It comes as if the country is their own and they can do what they want and bring in who they want to do whatever. But if a government stays in power, like in the US, 10 years at the most, or you change 5 years, 10 years, you have persons, they're independent persons that are there for more than 10 years. So when a new government comes, that independent person gives their independent opinion in the interest of the country. But when a government goes past 20 years, the persons that are there in senior positions are their people. So nobody's discussing in a very effective, positive way how we could improve on what we're doing. Everybody just going along. I get my salary, I go along. No problem.
So there's a need for competent, objective people.
Very much.
Within the public service.
Within the public service. Within the public.
Wow.
Within the public service.
Dominica, this is something we will have to come back to sometime in the future. But Ronald, I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It is 2:53, and as we wind down, August 8th, 2025, Ronald, as we wind down, we want to thank everyone for tuning in to the big station. Good afternoon to Marlene Shillingford, Mr. Boland, good afternoon. Marvin Boland as well, good afternoon to you. Dana Filbert, good afternoon. Ivenia, good afternoon to you. We are winding down, Talk on the Block, speaking with Ronald Lander.
Richie, I would like to say a special good afternoon to my sister Glenda Lander Lugo, who is in Dominica now with her family, visiting my mother. My mother just turned 90, and she's here visiting in Dominica.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man.
Mommy. And if you have a chance, play Jeff Joe. Happy birthday for me, please.
Okay. Happy birthday to you, and Enjoy the time with family, huh? Mr. Landa, we appreciate you here on the big station. Of course, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks is we've got quite a number of people like me that are apolitical, that want to see advancement and development of our country, not for ourselves. Monsieur vieux quoi posa, moi qui est comme away, moi doit copy. But I want to contribute to the further development of my country for my son and my granddaughter, Skylar Lander. I want to make it a better place for the other young people. And all the knowledge I have, what is going to profit me when I go to my grave, all my knowledge and all my experience? I want to use it to assist in the improvement of management of Dominica and to ensure that Dominica is a better place for all of us to live.
I told you this man has the interests of Dominicans at heart. You can bet on that. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard from McCarthy Marie, economist, intellectual property expert. And you just heard from a financial consultant, former director of the Financial Intelligence Unit in our country, and senior financial investigator, Mr. Ronald Lander. It was indeed a pleasure. All right, you guys, keep it locked to the big station, Q95 FM. That's it for me. Matthias Belte Jr. joins you on Monday. I believe that's the 11th of August. Good afternoon to Lucille Edwards. Guys, that's it for me. My name is Richie Farrell, and as usual, I encourage you to go out there and be kind to someone. It could be a stranger, your neighbor, your colleagues. But whatever you do, you keep it locked to the big station Q95 FM. At 5:15, we bring you the evening news package. This will be presented by the lovely Amanda Bertrand. Stay tuned to the big station.
The New India Insurance Company has reopened its doors in Portsmouth, offering the same great services you get in Roseau. Motor vehicle insurance, home and business owners, fire and related perils, public liability, and so much more. Come, visit us today for insurance with a personal touch on Bay Street, Portsmouth, or call us at 445-4023. We are ready to serve you.
Looking to remodel your home? Visit Universal Elegance today, where comfort meets